They say the countryside is a place to escape the chaos, but no one ever tells you what exactly you're running from. Among endless cornfields where houses are miles apart, some sounds defy explanation. Footsteps on the porch at midnight, eyes watching through the window, and whistling, with no one there to whistle. In this video, you'll hear 3 true horror stories. Stories that left the people involved unable to sleep peacefully ever again. And if you're someone who enjoys the strange, details that send chills down your spine, and stories that make you double-check your locks before bed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Every subscription, like, or comment isn't just a number. It's a powerful motivation to keep telling these deeply haunting stories. Truly, thank you for being here. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and together, let's step into places people only mention in whispers. On a summer night in August 2018, deep in the quiet countryside of Buckingham, Iowa, the silence was shattered by a knock at the door, clear, firm, like the darkness outside was demanding the right to come in. The small wooden house, nestled in the middle of vast cornfields, was home to a middle-aged couple, Cheryl and her husband, a quiet, cautious man who made his living growing corn and was used to the slow pace of rural life. That evening, they had just returned from a friendly get-together with their neighbors, George and Linda. A few rounds of Scrabble, a couple of bourbons, and soft laughter under oil lamps. Everything was the picture of a normal night in the countryside. But normal is the easiest thing to break once the night falls. Around 11 p.m., as Cheryl was washing glasses in the kitchen, a sudden loud knock echoed from the front door. Not the polite kind, but a thud, a pound, like someone was trying to wake the house from its slumber. Her husband froze, lifting his head from his book. They exchanged a look, not puzzled, but alarmed. In a place like this, at that hour, no one knocked. Not unless something was wrong. Then came a voice, high-pitched, unnatural, like someone trying to mimic their voice. "Excuse me, is anyone home? We're lost. Our car broke down." A woman's voice, or someone trying to sound like a woman. Cheryl set the glass down and quickly wiped her hands. "Don't open the door," she said, clear, without hesitation. Her husband glanced through the peephole. No one. Just the empty porch, dark as pitch. "It's me and my wife. We need help." Cheryl frowned. "Listen, he's making up the story as he talks." Despite his suspicion, her husband called George, thinking maybe the neighbor was playing a prank. But when George picked up, the sound of a TV played in the background, along with his sleepy voice. "Are you nuts?" "I'm home, watching a movie." And in that moment, her husband went cold. Because whoever was outside was not someone they knew, and he was still out there, knocking. Cheryl stood still, gripping the dish towel, eyes locked on the blurry wooden door. The air in the house thickened, colder than usual, even though the AC was humming in the corner. Her husband slowly set the phone down, his palms slick with sweat. George's confirmation that he was at home, not here, was like a switch flipping, turning on a real sense of danger. "We have to lock all the windows," Cheryl said, voice low but firm. Just as she spoke, a soft rattling came from the living room, not the wind, not a bug hitting the glass. It was the sound of a window latch, someone trying to open it. They bolted out of the kitchen. Her husband ran toward the front window, eyes scanning the darkness outside. Under the dim porch light, he saw no one. But as he pressed his ear close, he heard it. Breathing. Heavy. Fast. As if someone were standing right there outside, separated only by a thin sheet of glass. Cheryl had already grabbed her phone, hands trembling as she dialed 911. She no longer thought it was a prank. She had lived in this countryside her entire life, and her instincts told her tonight was not a normal night. "Someone's trying to break in," she said quickly into the phone. "Could be 2 people, maybe more." While Cheryl spoke with the dispatcher, her husband rushed into the bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out the Remington shotgun he kept there, just in case. His hands trembled slightly as he loaded it, not because he feared shooting, but because he feared he might have to. Because if he did, it meant every line between normal and nightmare had been erased. He returned to the living room, positioning himself in front of the window, shotgun ready in his hands. 2 minutes, Cheryl whispered. "Cops said they'll be here in 2 minutes. They're on their way." 2 minutes. 2 minutes in the dark, with 1 or more people out there trying to get in. From the left, near the dining room window, came a faint screech, like metal scraping against glass. Her husband didn't hesitate. He shouted, shotgun pointed outward, "Get lost! I've got a gun! Try me!" No reply. But footsteps, the sound of quick movement through dry grass, came from behind the house, as if someone had just run. A few seconds later, the sound of a car rolled up the dirt road, headlights cutting through the darkness. George, the neighbor, had arrived, and he brought his gun. "What's going on?" George yelled as he jumped out of his truck, eyes sweeping the yard. "They just ran," Cheryl's husband rasped. "But they're still out there." George nodded, moving slowly, shotgun raised to chest level. 2 men, 2 guns, standing among the cornfields like the last sentinels, waiting for the police. And the darkness said nothing. George quietly circled the back of the house, his boots crunching on the dry grass with soft snaps like breaking metal. The flashlight in his hand swept in arcs, scanning the trembling cornstalks swaying in the gentle wind. The husband followed close behind, shotgun across his chest, eyes fixed on the edge of the yard. The Iowa sky that night held no moon, only thick black clouds hanging low like the world itself was holding its breath. The cornfields rustled in the wind, but now that rustling sounded like whispers from a stranger's mouth. "I swear I heard footsteps," George whispered, eyes darting toward a line of low trees near the edge of the property. "At least 2 of them." "No footprints," the husband whispered back. "But I swear, someone was breathing right by the window." Then a sudden rustle, fast, very close. They both whipped to the right. The flashlight beam caught a branch pushed aside, as if someone had just passed through. No figure in sight. But the feeling. Something was hiding in the corn, just a few steps away. George raised his gun. "Get out of there. We're armed. This isn't a joke." No response. Only the wind rising, making the corn leaves slap and whisper like hundreds of hands clapping gently. Suddenly, from the opposite side, the back door, Cheryl screamed. "The back door! Someone's trying to get in!" Both men turned and sprinted back to the house. Their hearts pounded not from fear, but from urgency. Every second that went by was another chance for the intruder to get inside. As they rounded the corner, they saw Cheryl standing at the back door, still holding the phone to her ear. Her hand trembled, but her gaze was steady. "They didn't try to break it down," she said as they reached her. "But one of them, I heard him. He whispered, 'Open the door, I'm so cold.'" Her husband scanned the area, gun raised. "I'm not cold," he shouted, "but my shotgun sure is ready." Silence. Dead silence. A faint click, like a knife scraping lightly against a doorknob. Then, gone. And then, the sound of a police siren echoed from the end of the dirt road, red and blue lights bleeding into the darkness. Only then did true silence return. No more footsteps, no more whispers, only the heavy breaths and pounding hearts of 3 people who survived a night they never asked for. The police arrived in 2 patrol cars, their flashing lights casting eerie glows on the corn stalks and weathered walls of the house, making them seem as if they were breathing. A young officer, face still fresh, stepped forward and quickly ran through the basic questions. Anyone hurt? Did you see the suspect's face? Any blood? Any evidence? Number nothing. Just darkness, strange sounds, a few footprints pointing in no clear direction on the damp earth, and a fear that had no name. They walked around the house, shone flashlights into the fields, checked the window areas, and then shook their heads. No one's here anymore. If they were, they're long gone, one officer said. So, who do you think they were? Cheryl asked, her voice still hoarse. Could be some drifters, or worse, someone local you wouldn't suspect. Either way, he glanced around. This isn't the first call like this we've had. The husband clenched his jaw. You mean, this has happened before? The officer shrugged. Out here in the countryside, all it takes is a thick enough darkness and a few minutes when no one's looking. And anything can happen. The next morning, they installed a 4-camera system around the house and mounted a new motion sensor floodlight above the porch. Cheryl couldn't sleep soundly anymore. Every small noise at night made her flinch. As for her husband, he spent hours just staring at the front door. An old wooden door, barely 2 inches thick. That's all. The only thing that stood between them and the darkness that night. No one ever came back. No one was ever caught. But to this day, when someone asks if living in the countryside is safe, they just smile faintly and glance toward the cornfields, where someone once stood, pretending to be a victim when they were the hunter all along. On a sweltering summer night in 2018, deep within an old farm in rural Iowa, a 17-year-old boy came to understand the true meaning of being watched, not by a person, but by something, not entirely of this world. His name was Ryan. His parents had sent him to watch over his grandparents' farm for a week. So you can learn what real work is, his father said. But on the very first night, Ryan realized that the real work here wasn't found in any textbook. The farm was nearly 10 miles from town, no neighbors, no cell signal, and nothing but endless cornfields stretching in every direction. Ryan wasn't afraid of the dark, but that first night, something felt off. At 11:42 p.m., as he was about to turn off the lights in the living room, Ryan heard something, a rustling sound, as if someone was moving through the corn. At first, he thought it was a deer, but then a moo rang out. The whole herd of cows suddenly bellowed at once, creating a broken, alarm-like noise. Ryan jumped to his feet and ran to his grandfather's room, where a hunting rifle hung on the wall. He had never shot anyone, not even a real target, but instinct told him this time it wasn't an animal. Grabbing a flashlight, he walked toward the barn. One of the barn doors was wide open, even though he had locked it tightly that afternoon. One cow was missing. Then from the cornfield came a sound he had never heard before, the mooing of a cow mixed with human voices. A whispering voice in an unknown language rose from the rustling stalks, as if dozens of people were gathered deep within the field. He raised the gun and fired 2 shots into the air. Silence. Complete silence. And then, footsteps. Light. Some close, some far. Surrounding him. Ryan knew. If he didn't retreat now, he might never make it back to that house again. Ryan stepped back, his hands trembling on the rifle. He swept the flashlight through each row of corn, the weak beam only making the darkness seem thicker. The field, just a sea of green by day, now resembled a breathing maze, each step pulling him deeper. Rustle, another footstep, then another, from the opposite direction. Ryan had no doubt now. He wasn't just being watched, he was being surrounded. "Hey, who's there?" he shouted, his voice cracking through the night. No answer. But then, in the next moment, the beam of his flashlight passed over something that made his heart stop. A human figure, standing between the rows of corn, no more than 4 meters away, motionless, dressed in black from head to toe, and on the face, a blank white mask. No expression, just 2 empty eye holes and a mouth crudely painted in a twisted grin. Ryan tightened his grip on the rifle. "I'm armed. Back off." No reply. The figure didn't move. He fired a shot into the ground just in front of the stranger's feet. No reaction. But then, from behind, from the left, from the right, more figures emerged. 5, 6, 7 of them, all wearing masks, quietly stepping into a circle around Ryan. No one spoke. No one rushed. It was like a play they'd rehearsed for a long time. And then they began to chant. A strange language. Not Latin. Not anything Ryan had ever heard. The voices droned, whispered, echoing in the night wind like raindrops falling upward. Ryan felt a chill spread across his skin, his head spinning like he was drunk. He screamed, raised the gun, spun around, and pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 3 shots. No one fell. But they all stopped, then turned to face him. At the same time. That was all it took. Ryan turned and ran. He didn't know how far he ran. Grass tore at his legs, sweat poured, and the sound of his heartbeat drowned out even his footsteps. When he reached the edge of the field, he tripped, rolled over a mound of dirt, and scrambled back to his feet, sprinting toward the faintly glowing farmhouse in the distance. He burst through the door, slammed it shut, gasping, and ran to the barn. But when he arrived, he froze. In the middle of the barn floor, under the brightest light from the overhead bulb, was a circle of lit candles, and in the center, it was the severed head of the missing cow, placed on a rusted iron plate, surrounded by symbols drawn in blood. Ryan backed away, his back pressed against the cold wooden wall of the barn. The cow's head, its eyes still wide open, seemed to stare at him. The flames of the candles singed the paper edges, and the mixture of blood, incense smoke, manure, and sweat made Ryan nearly vomit. He sprinted back to the main house, slammed the door shut, and called 911 from the landline. "My name is Ryan Callahan. I'm watching my grandparents' farm. There are people in the cornfield. They killed a cow. They did some kind of ritual. They're wearing masks. Please, come quickly." His voice trembled, but it was enough for the dispatcher to grasp the gravity of the situation. She kept him on the line and promised to dispatch police from the nearest station, over 20 miles away. Ryan locked every window, drew the curtains, turned off the lights, and pointed the rifle toward the porch. He sat motionless for nearly an hour, listening to every gust of wind, every creak of the wood, every vague footstep that rose and vanished, and then a sound from upstairs. 3 creaking steps, as if someone had just walked across the old wooden hallway. But Ryan was sure he was the only one in the house. He couldn't breathe. Gripping the gun, he climbed the stairs 1 step at a time, sweat dripping onto the floor like a countdown. Each wooden step groaned in protest at his presence. The master bedroom door was ajar. He pushed it open. The room was empty. No one inside, only a piece of paper lying on the bed, handwritten in red ink, or something like ink. Next time, it will be human blood. Ryan bolted downstairs just as police headlights swept across the fence. He ran outside like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. 2 officers approached, seeing him holding a gun, his face ghost white. He led them to the barn, but the candle circle had been extinguished. The cow's head was gone, and all the symbols on the floor had been cleaned as if they'd never been there. No evidence, no witnesses, only fear, still flickering in Ryan's eyes. Early the next morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the dew-covered rows of corn, Ryan sat on the front porch steps, eyes wide open, unblinking. The police had left hours before, leaving behind a temporary report and a teenager with haunted eyes. They found nothing. No blood, no candles, no footprints, no masks, no note, as if everything had been a hallucination, a sleepwalking nightmare of a lonely boy in the night. But Ryan knew the truth. He remembered every gaze behind those white masks, remembered how they didn't speak, didn't move, yet still made him feel like he had been chosen. When his parents arrived to pick him up, Ryan didn't say much. He just stared out at the cornfield, where the wind still blew steadily, as if nothing had ever happened. A few weeks later, his grandparents installed cameras, floodlights, and a modern alarm system around the farm. But Ryan never returned. He refused, not out of fear, but because he knew if he went back, he would hear the chanting again, echoing somewhere inside his mind. The police never solved the case. No one was arrested. No one was even suspected. But months later, at another farm over 50 miles away, a similar incident occurred. A decapitated sheep, a strange stone circle, and scribbled lines drawn in brownish red liquid. This time, no one called the police. The owner just quietly sold the land. Ryan read about it in the news and simply nodded, because he knew they hadn't come to scare. They came to prepare. Howard wasn't the kind of guy who feared the dark. At 25, he had lived through floods, crop failures, even a near-deadly tractor accident when he was 17. But that night, in the sweltering heat of July 2023, when the whistling came from within the cornfield, Howard knew something was very, very wrong. His family's farm lay deep in rural Arkansas, where only the chirping of crickets and the hum of the water pump remained after 9 p.m. That week, his parents had gone into the city to deal with paperwork, leaving Howard and his 2 younger sisters, Crystal and Morgan, in charge of the house, livestock, and garden. That evening, Howard had just finished feeding the cows and was sitting on the porch eating a sandwich when the 2 dogs, Bruno and Duke, suddenly shot up, growled, and dashed toward the backyard. The wind was still, but the corn stalks swayed as if something was slipping between them. "There's something in the field," Crystal said, peeking out the window. Morgan nodded, holding up her phone to record, thinking it would be funny. Howard stood, frowning. The dogs only barked like that when they sensed a stranger, and only if it was a person, not a wild animal. He walked to the fence, scanning the darkness. The back porch light flickered weakly. Then a sound emerged, small but distinct. Whistle, whistle, whistle. 3 simple notes, not the wind, not a bird. A whistle, deliberate, as if someone were calling or teasing. Howard turned, slowly retrieving the hunting rifle from the shed. He wasn't paranoid, but in all his years here, no one had ever whistled from inside the cornfields at nearly midnight. Crystal grabbed his hand. "Don't go in there. It's a trap." Howard looked out over the field once more. The corn still swayed. The dogs still barked. And from the darkness, another whistle. But this time, it was answering him. Howard gripped the hunting rifle tightly, eyes fixed on the edge of the field. His entire body was strung like a wire. Part of him wanted to move in. The other part screamed that it would be the stupidest thing he could do. Thankfully, Crystal held him back. "Don't go in," she repeated, her voice lower this time. "That's what it wants you to do." Morgan was still recording, but her hands shook, the phone swaying, casting a weak light across the corn rows. Bruno and Duke continued to growl, fur raised, locked on the darkness. Howard took a step back and fired a warning shot into the air. Bang! The gunshot echoed across the field. Then, silence. The dogs stopped barking. The wind died. All three waited. Then, from the dark, a soft chuckle. Hard to tell if it was a person or just wind slicing through the stalks, but it was audible. And right after that, whistle, whistle, whistle. Again, this time closer, clearer. Crystal gasped. "It's coming closer." "No, it's toying with us," Howard said, voice ice cold. He stepped forward just a few paces, now standing only about 20 feet from the corn. The rifle trembled in his hands. The air felt frozen. Then he saw him. A man, standing right at the edge of the field, between two tall stalks. Tall and thin, dressed in dark clothes, arms limp at his sides. His face wasn't clear, just the porch light glinting off two pale white eyes, blank, emotionless. Howard yelled, "Get out! You take one more step and I'll shoot." The man didn't respond. He just whistled, the same tune as before, then began to step into the field. Howard fired a second shot, this time into the ground in front of him. The stranger stopped, stared at Howard for a few seconds, then turned and melted into the corn without a sound. Howard turned back, pulling his sisters inside, locking every door, closing all curtains, and turning on every light in the house. Then he called their father, who answered, worried but firm. "You're the man of the house now, Howard. If he comes back, don't hesitate." The night grew deeper. The wind picked up. The house creaked like something was pressing in from all sides. And just as everyone settled into the rooms, from the second floor window, Howard heard it again. Whistle, whistle, whistle. Then, a figure drifted across the lawn and stopped, lifted its head to stare directly into Howard's window, not moving, just standing there and continuing to whistle. Howard kept his hand on the rifle, eyes locked on the window. That shadow, that man, was still there, unmoving, his head tilted upward toward Howard's room. The distance wasn't far, but not close enough to make out his face. Still, Howard felt one thing for certain. The man knew exactly where he was standing, and he was waiting. The whistling came again, slow, each note stretched as if dragging the final breath of silence behind it. A cold fury rose in Howard's chest. This wasn't fear anymore. This was a violation, a challenge. He opened the window, aimed the gun outside, and shouted, "Get out! What do you want?" The figure didn't answer. He just tilted his head, a slow, mocking motion, then stepped back into the darkness. Howard fired. The bullet hit the grass, right next to the man's foot. This time, he reacted. He turned, not to run, but to walk, slowly, toward the front of the house, where the porch light cast broken streaks of yellow across the lawn. The dogs barked furiously below, but Howard no longer cared. He bolted downstairs, threw open the front door, and stepped onto the porch, rifle at the ready. But no one was there. The yard was empty. The cornfield was still, as if no stranger had ever stepped near. Bruno whimpered, tail between his legs, backing away as Howard approached the edge of the corn. He scanned around, listened. Only insects and wind. Then, from behind him, knock, knock. Not on the door, but on Morgan's window. He turned and saw the figure standing outside the second-floor window. There was no way to reach that level from the outside. No balcony, no ladder, no ledge. And yet he was there. Howard rushed inside, bounding up 2 stairs at a time, bursting into Morgan's room. She was crying, Crystal hugging her tightly, pointing at the window. He was outside, but he didn't climb up. Howard dashed to the window, flung it open, looked out. Only blackness. But on the damp ground below were footprints. Someone had stood right there, on the second story, somehow. Howard turned back, his heart pounding like a war drum. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep his sisters safe. The police arrived about 30 minutes later, just before dawn. 3 cars, 6 officers, flashlights, and weapons at the ready. They searched the area around the house, the edge of the cornfield, even the roof where Howard claimed he'd seen the figure. No one. No clear sign of forced entry. No injuries. Just 3 young people, 2 girls and a young man, shaking from cold and something far less tangible. Howard told them everything. They took notes, nodded, then said the most common thing of all. Could have been some kids playing a prank. Howard didn't respond. He knew the difference between a prank and a meticulously planned threat. And what he didn't say was, even while the police stood there, flashlights sweeping every corner, he could still hear the whistle, far off from the cornfield. Just 3 notes, very faint, but clear. Crystal and Morgan didn't sleep for the next 2 nights. Howard set a chair in front of the door, sleeping with the rifle on his lap. But the man didn't return. Not right then. 2 weeks later, his parents decided to sell the farm. Too many things they couldn't explain. The family moved away. The grass grew wild. The corn was never harvested again. People say that if you stand outside the fence at night, especially on moonless nights, you'll hear a very faint sound from deep within the field. Whistle, whistle, whistle. Not a bird, not the wind. Just a call from someone or something that never really left. Three stories, 3 long nights, and 3 people who would never look at the countryside the same way again. We often believe that as long as we leave the city behind, we'll be safe. But darkness doesn't care if it's urban or rural. It only needs one unlocked door. One field is wide enough, and one person who thinks they're somewhere peaceful. If you're still here, thank you. Truly. You are the reason this channel exists. If you found this video worth sharing, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Every small action from you is a big push that helps this channel continue to bring haunting, meaningful, and truly chilling stories. Have you ever experienced something similar? Who do you think was whistling in the night? Share your story. Maybe your story will be the next video. See you again on another night, where we'll step into the darkness together once more.